Welcome back to Extraordinary Strides, the podcast that celebrates the sparkle in your stride and everyday athletes doing truly epic things. I'm your host, Coach Christine, and today we are going full throttle into the world of sequins, finish lines, and serious ultramarathon mileage. My guest is someone who defies description, but I'm going to try anyway. She's an UESCA certified ultra running coach, a beloved admin of the Disney Drinkers running team, the reigning queen and running, so it's a little bit of both, of race day costuming. And oh yeah, she's run over, guys, seriously, 300 marathons. And I'm going to ask her to clarify if it's over 300 marathons and if that includes her ultras, but we'll find out. But that's not a typo. You didn't mishear. Over 300 and counting. Charlotte knows how to chase big goals while keeping the fun dial turned all the way up. So grab your sparkly visors, pour yourself a mimosa, or maybe you're making a tailwind cocktail. Settle in because we're about to cover everything from pacing plans to, of course, how to costume on the run. Charlotte, welcome on in. It's so great to have you back.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine.
I have so many questions because I am absolutely fascinated by your story. I want to know a little bit of a backstory first, but let's get right to it. Let's break the ice. What's the most ridiculous thing you've ever run a race in? And did it survive all the way to the finish line and beyond?
Well, I've got a few. And my motto is head to toe, start to finish. So I always, when I'm going in with a costume, I don't make any plans on, dropping a prop or maybe taking a layer off. I am committed for the full race, no matter the distance. There have been a few times that things got a little complicated or chafing started to happen. Okay. So I always carry extra safety pins and things like that where I can pull something up. But there's never been one that I've been absolutely miserable about. Usually if it is, it's just because of the heat and whatever I have on is too many layers or too heavy and it just weighs down on me. Probably the one that really affected my run was one called Farm Days. It's on a farm, and so I was a horse. And so I had this huge horse head on top, not just a hat, just this huge horse head. And it was a 24-hour race, so over time, in the heat of the day, that just kind of really got to my head, made my shoulders and back hurt. So didn't get quite the mileage I wanted on that one, but I still committed and kept to the costume the whole time.
Okay, I want to hear about this mantra, this core belief of yours. I feel like it's a super ingrained in your psyche as to if you're going to commit, you're going to commit all the way. Is that how you do everything? Is it full throttle all the way, or is it
pretty much
for your
so.
running? Okay,
yeah, pretty much your
personality.
So. Yeah.
Okay, my friend.
And so when I'll show up to a start line and I'm ready. And the reason I do this, start line to finish line is because people are going to come up to me and say at the finish line, did you carry that the whole race? Or did you wear that whole race? So I know going into it, that's going to be the question I'm going to get. So I'm prepared to say, yes, show up to the start line. Are you going to carry that? Are you going to? Yes, I'll see you at the finish line.
I mean, I love your level of commitment to it. There is no doubt. I thought that I was committed to running sparkly, but you definitely take it up a notch, which also you have in your running journey as well. Before we dive into your backstory, though, I must know, is there a drink that you feel captures your running personality specifically?
I love during a race. I am not shy, especially when you get into the ultras where it's, longer distances, longer times you're out there. You just get tired of water and Gatorade. So I love a good cold beer. And sometimes I don't care if it's hot beer, just something that's a different taste than water and Gatorade. Also kind of going into the ultra world, especially with the group I run with, a lot of races called Yeti Trail Runners. Fireball seems to be the drink of ultra runners. So pretty much known as the Fireball Fairy. I always have some Fireball on me to share with everybody. And I'm known for doing my Fireball dance at a longer race when I hit the 100K mark. I always stop, play the song by Pitbull and do a little dance and share some Fireball to get me the next little bit of the race.
So does this dance only happen at the 100K mark?
Typically, yeah. I mean, if it's a shorter race and I'm not going to get to that, I'll find some way, in the race or some monumental mile or maybe I'll take a break and go back out and have some fireball to get me going. So, but, it's the 100K mark usually on a lot of races that I really like to hit the fireball.
Okay. So whoever wants to really see is going to have to commit to, I think that translates to about 64 miles. Is that accurate?
62. Yeah.
62. Okay. Yeah. That's wild. Okay. How did this get started? Like how were you an athlete in school? Did you start cross country? Tell me where this all began. Your like runner origin story, essentially.
Oh, well, I was never the athlete in high school. I did some cheerleading, did some ice skating, but nothing really, where I consider myself an athlete. Didn't really start running until I was in my, mid to late 30s. I had put on that, those extra pounds well after college, and just decided I needed to make a lifestyle change to be healthier. And I actually lost most of my weight doing other things, other little workout routines. But then when I lost the weight, I had confidence to get out where I lived. There's this thing called the Loop, and it's just it's kind of a loop around the city, as in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, and started out just walk a mile or walk a half mile, run a half mile, walk a half mile, and just doing some intervals like that. And as soon as you say, oh, I'm going out for a run, people are like, oh, well, there's a 5K coming up next month, why don't you do that? Oh, you got to do this 10K. So, as soon as you label yourself as a runner, and I believe that no matter your pace, your speed, your distance, if you're getting out there, you're a runner. I don't believe in jogging. It's all running. So once you kind of label yourself as a runner, then, you get drawn into the actual race activities. And that's a good way to keep motivated, keeping something on the calendar and having a goal in sight.
Okay. So do you remember your very first commitment to maybe a race that scared you a little bit? And Charlotte, are you a mere mortal? Do you actually have fears when it comes to running?
Yeah. I mean, I started off just doing some local 5Ks and 10Ks. Just south of me is Charleston, South Carolina, and they have the very infamous Cooper River Bridge Run, which is like the second largest 10K in the U.S. So that was kind of my first goal, was I want to run over that bridge. And being here on the coast, we don't have a lot of hills. Our bridges aren't quite that big, and you can't really run on them here in Wilmington. So, I was very nervous about running up that bridge. But, it was like one of those things, just conquer your fears. You're not going to know if you're going to like it or not until you go out and do it.
Okay. So we went from that to, I would say maybe it felt a little bit more of, I won't say casual running yet, but we're definitely not in ultra territory. Where did it start to spiral into your first marathon turning into an ultra? And then tell us more about this 300 plus club that you're part of. It's a lot there.
Yeah. So again, you're running the half marathons at this point. Somebody's like, oh, when are you going to run a marathon? I'm like, yeah, never. But then I found the local team and training program, which, as you know, is a coaching program that's a fundraiser for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So my first marathon was Disney World 2006. So did that through the team and training program, and I just became addicted. That running for a purpose just became so much more fun. And, the group of people that we had here in our area that continue to, train for these events, I spent several sessions with them and did several events. And so that's kind of where the marathon addiction started. Then, you always find that people are going to say, when you hit a goal, what's next? So I had to keep on thinking of, well, what's next? So traveling to races and doing some of these races, I met a lot of people in the 50 States Marathon Club. Like, oh, that's a great goal, run a marathon in every state. And when I went into it, I knew it was not going to be something I wanted to crank out fast, because a lot of these states I'd never been to. So I didn't want to just fly in, do a marathon, and then fly back. I wanted to go see North Dakota, go see what there is to see in South Dakota, and enjoy the state. Also, another one of my running kind of catchphrases is seeing America 26.2 miles at a time. So I really wanted to enjoy that journey.
Okay.
And of course, when you're oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask. So at this point, have you done the 50 states or are you still working on that?
I completed that in 2018.
Okay.
So that's kind of what led to the ultras was, I'm getting to this big goal that I had been working on for many years. So what's next? At that point, I lived in Charleston, and there was a great group of runners that I ran with, and they're talking about these ultras. I'm like, okay, I've heard of them. And I'd actually done one at that point when I lived in the Florida Keys. I ran the Florida Keys 50, but then focused on, doing the state. So just like, okay, now I think this is a new challenge. So started running, some 50Ks, 50 milers. And of course, somebody tosses out, well, there's a great 100 miler in Tennessee in August. Don't you want to do that? And that was the furthest thing on my mind. Are you kidding? August, 100 miles? No, thank you.
Exactly what I'm thinking. Absolutely not. Emphatically.
But then, of course, I signed up.
Okay, glutton for punishment. That must be the key core. Absolutely there. Okay. So at this point, Florida Keys 50 is your first ultra. You tapped into a couple of others before you made it your way to your first 100 miler in Tennessee. Is that true?
That's correct. Yeah. So the Florida Keys 50 was in 2015, and it kind of positioned itself doing the 50 states. We find that, it's hard financially to get this done, especially the way I wanted to do it and be able to travel. So we would do things called doubles and triples. So the first weekend in May, I had a marathon in Wisconsin and in Michigan on the same weekend. So that's a double weekend. And then a couple weeks later was when the Keys 50 was happening. And then a few weeks later after that was when the Bear Lake Triple. So a marathon in Idaho, Wisconsin, and Utah in 3 different days. So the 50 kind of lined up perfectly for training. But then I said, as I said, I kind of sat back and finished the states. And then in 2018, when I completed that, again, started off with, some 50 milers, I think was my first one. And that would have been in February 2018. And then that one popped up in August of 2018 that I signed up for. So, started doing some ultras at that point, just to build up to that 100 miler.
Can you possibly pick a favorite on any of the distances at this point?
A favorite distance. I love the 100 miler. A lot of them, I'm finding that it's not a 100-mile race. I do a lot of fixed timed races. So a couple weeks ago, I did one called Stevie's Roost 48 hour, and 48 hour is the perfect time frame, I think, for, me to be able to go enjoy, not be crushed by, is the clock chasing me? Am I going to finish 100 miles? I'm able to, since it's over 2 nights, get 2 to 3 hours of sleep, maybe each night. And I know, I can't say there's a phrase, there's no such thing as an easy 100 miler. They're all tough, but I go into that one a little bit more confidence if I have the time, and if it gets hot or if it starts raining or if I get sleepy, I can take a break and still get the 100 miles in. So, that's what I'm really kind of focusing on now are, 100-mile races, but with ones that have a generous time limit.
Okay. So I am curious, because again, so you're part of a very elite club of folks that have done over the 300 marathon distance. Are some of those ultras as well, or are they separate? Do they have to be a sanctioned 26.2 for it to count towards that?
I do keep that 306 number, which I hit as of this past weekend. It is total marathons and ultras combined. Okay. They are all organized races. These aren't train and runs. They are organized races that I've registered for, paid for, trained for, traveled to, and committed to the miles there. So I think the split is about, 126 of those are ultras, and the rest are just regular marathons.
Is there anything that you still see out in the horizon when talking about the what's next that you're still a little intrigued by, you want to consider doing?
There is a plan. It is a very loose plan and it may not happen. I mean, there's so many other things. I used to always say I wanted my 6 stars by the time I was 60. I wanted 7 continents by the time I'm 70. And a lot of that is just the financial burden of, the commitment to getting those in. And then, as getting into some of those races for the 6 stars, world majors is complicated. A lot of them, are hard to get into. Whether you even if you try to fundraise for like Boston, for example, that's a big commitment. So I wanted something, let's say, a little bit more realistic, but a little bit more my speed. As you mentioned, so with the 300 marathons, there's what's called the World Mega Marathon List. And so they keep a list of all the people in the world that have submitted that they have completed 300 marathons. And there's a North America list as well, kept by the same team. So, that was a great goal to get to. And I think, I wish I could remember the numbers off the top of my head about how many people have actually hit that. Not a lot, not a lot in the world and not a lot in the US. But there's this really, really small club that I want to get into. It's called the 100 100s Club. And that is a list of the people that have done 100 milers. And right now, I think there's just 30, kind of changes every month or so because, people are starting to hit that, and people will hit it more frequently now that 100 milers have become more popular and there are more of them. But right now, I think there's only about 32, 33 people in the in the world that are on that list. So doing the math, I think it's possible. I'm definitely going to have to take do more of those 48-hour races. Kind of the ruling is the 100 miles has to be run within 48 hours. So I'm at 34 right now, so I'm a third of the way there, and that took me about 7 years. So even if the last 2 take me 10 years each, or the last 2/3 take me 10 years each, another 20 years, that'll be pushing up there. But you would be amazed. I go to some of these races and there are upper 70s, 80-year-olds. They even, there's a gentleman who's 90-something years old who still can crank out those miles. So that gives me hope that may eventually be possible.
I have zero doubt that I'll never forget my first race that I did where I thought that I was going to let the older gentleman kind of pace me, where I was like, if I just keep up with him for like maybe the first half, I'll be slow and conservative. I'll be able to finish strong. He blew me out of the water. There is just, we have so many incredible athletes, especially as we know more about nutrition and fueling and all those different things. And just some people just have just incredible genetics. So that's amazing. And I can see you tackling that. So the next logical question is there anything, Charlotte, that you wouldn't do? Like you see an escape of running and you're like, no, I'm not doing that. Like that's the one thing that I will not cross. I can't see that going hand in hand with your personality.
I'm limited again by my speed and my ability to train on certain terrains. As I said, I live at the coast, so I don't have hills. I can, do parking decks or some other things, but I don't have a very convenient place to train on terrain, rooty, rocky trails. So that kind of hinders my capability to do a lot of races. And I said my pace, I'm slow. I have no qualms about being slow. It doesn't bother me. I'm still out there. And, sometimes people say it's actually harder to run a 100-miler in 35 hours versus doing it in 18 hours. So, I'm out there just, same distance, and now I'm out there longer.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a lot of races that I would love to do, but I just don't think I would be able to do it in the time limit required by the race. 30 hours is typically, kind of the standard for ultra marathons for 100 milers. So kind of what we call the Super Bowl of 100 milers is Western States Endurance Run. You have to run another race to qualify to get in, and then it's a really tough lottery. I would love to run Western States, but I think, I would know going into that I know I probably can't run that race in the 30-hour time limit. So, it's always a goal, and I'm not saying that I would never try it, but I don't think I have the terrain and the ways to train that, and plus the altitude out in California where it's run. I love that idea, but I just got to be realistic that I don't think it's in my wheelhouse.
So that leads me to the next question, and I don't know how I'm going to stop this interview because I have 3 gazillion questions that honestly come into mind. Do you consider yourself a road runner, a trail runner at this point? Because so many ultras are trail, or they're mixed in terms of the actual territory or the terrain that you cover. Or do you just consider yourself a runner and that's it?
No, I think it's just a runner. If I had to choose between the two, I'm really good at road running, even ultra distances. There's several that I have done that are all pavement, all concrete. And I think I feel more confident in that. I have a nasty habit of falling. I'm not the most gracious and graceful runner. I've had to drop out of a race before because I had to leave and go get medical treatment. So I love trail running. It's just so much more fun. But there's that, those roots and those rocks that make me nervous. And so I tend to slow down my pace because of that. And again, that backs me in that corner of what's the time limit? Am I going to be able to make it, knowing what's going on out there?
Yeah, I feel you on this specifically because when I look at things that I want to tackle, I have to be very careful of what I sign up for in between, because an injury could potentially take out 3, 4, 5, 6 months worth of races that I've already planned or paid for. And I'm more so for you because you have practically a race every single weekend. So I can understand where there would be a little bit more of trepidation of anything that would consider or have that of a possibility for you, which of course leads me to the next question. So I'm hearing that was a potential did not finish due to medical. Have you actually started a race and thought, no, this is just not it. Today is not my day. I'm going to have a DNF without the need because of medical or injury?
No. Honestly, I've been told that I have a very strong mental game. Now, granted, 15, 20 miles in, you're like, oh man, I am just 15, 20 miles in. I got 80 something to go. Does it go through my mind? Yes, of course. Okay. And I'm like, but I'm able to push through and get past that mental wall. It's not as much the physical wall, it's the mental wall of, yes, this is gonna suck. Running 100 miles is not easy. And so, yeah, I've always managed to push through. Again, going to these fixed time races, one of the benefits is that there's no DNF. Like the 48-hour race I ran 2 weeks ago, I could have done one lap, decided, not my day. I'm going to stop and still be considered a finisher. So that is the advantage of, the timed races. So a little bit more mental comfort zone there, that that you're still going to get a finish, but I still have my goal of kind of the distance I want to get. There have been times that I've, went in thinking, okay, I'd love to get 100K, only came out with 50 miles, or, any kind of combination of that. But I still go out there and keep trying.
So what came first? Did Charlotte have a natural grittiness and resiliency, or is that something you feel like you developed through your process of running?
I think it's a little bit of a blend. I've always been pretty, organized is the word I like to use, but it's not as really organized. It's just a planner. I go into race with a plan. And if it doesn't happen, I'm always good. If it doesn't work out the way I want it to, or the way I planned it, I'm always good at spinning it. And I'm like, okay, well, now it's raining. Now what? Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do if it rains. So I always have plan so much as far as, what I can do in life in general. And I think that kind of translates to running, to where, you go in with a plan, you go in with a goal, but you always have your B goal and your C goal, just in case.
So I'm having difficulty of pulling away from this conversation, because I feel like there's just so much that literally, when can we sign up to watch a full documentary of your experiences? Because there's just so much to tap into. But I definitely, for the listeners, want to make sure that we talk a little bit about your costumes as well, because again, especially for folks that are more into Run Disney, we see a lot of elaborate costumes. And I'm not taking away any of those incredible folks that are out there running the marathons or Dopey or anything in all of those beautiful, incredibly elaborate costumes. But my friend, you've taken it a step further with some of your elaborate costumes, and again, spanning some really incredible distances. So I need to know, what's that one costume, and it's so hard because you have so many, that has gotten the biggest reaction from spectators or fellow runners?
I think it was probably the birthday cake. I was running the Little Rock Marathon, I think 2012. It was on my birthday. And my mom, who is an amazing seamstress and can make anything, and she makes a lot of my costumes, she made me this 3-tiered birthday cake. And so it's a lot of PVC involved, which led to complications when I needed to take off my sweatpants because it got warmer, or when I needed to go to the porta potty. Spoiler alert, that did not happen because that PVC was not fitting in the porta potty, so I just had to hold it. But yeah, so that was probably, that's one of my iconics. I put it in the top 5. It's hard for me to pick a top costume, but it's definitely one of my top 5 favorite costumes, and probably one I'm most known for.
Okay, so I'm hearing that your mom's not just a seamstress. It sounds like she has a little bit of engineering in some of these feats as well. Would you say that your skill set has developed more so as you continue to learn from her as to when she develops this, or do you kind of just start with a concept and turn it over to her?
It's definitely a partner project. I come up with an idea. She'll give me, here's how we could probably make this work. Here's the material that we should use to make this work. There's been times where I'm like, that's not what I wanted, but okay, this is the best we can do.
Right.
Right. Like my space shuttle design for Space Coast Marathon, that took me a while to get that, and it still has some design flaws that if I ever were to wear it again, I needed to work out those kinks. But yeah, it's definitely a partner project of, here's what I want, here's what I'm looking for, and, here's what's in her capabilities to make, and, how can we get to the finished product.
Are most of your costumes handmade, custom made, or have you ever been like, you know what, I'm short on time, Amazon to the rescue, or is that not how you roll?
Amazon definitely is my savior.
Okay.
Just because, like when I, in the Charleston Marathon, I'd always wear a Southern Belle dress, the full hoop skirt, crinoline, everything. And my mom could easily make one of those, but the time and effort to do that, I could not. I couldn't afford to pay her to do this. Not that I'm paying her, but I can't take her away from her full-time job of making, she makes window treatments and elaborate curtains and things like that. It would just be so time consuming and extensive that, that was a little bit too much of a project for me to ask of her when I'm doing 2 to 3 costumes a month. So definitely, we'll find things on Amazon. A lot of times it's, let me get this on Amazon, but let's tear it apart, rebuild it. So like a lot of my Dopey costumes from this past year were basically buy it on Amazon, tear it apart, make the pattern, add the sparkles, sew it back together.
Okay, so you're very efficient, I would say, with your time. So if you have to tap into some of those things, you will. Efficient with your mom's time, of course. What is like some advice you'd give to folks that are starting to tap into costume running, maybe have some trepidation about it, something they should consider, or a few things maybe they should consider about costume running?
It's just start out small. I mean, easy, people, you can add a tutu and tiara to pretty much anything. Mm-hmm. Even just, something small to carry, just practice what I always say practice what you are planning on running in. I never do that myself, but I always suggest that you practice in it. And, as I said, just start out small. And it's like, okay, well, that wasn't miserable. Now, this next time, let me add another, element or another layer to see how comfortable you can get. And also just be wary of, or be cognizant of the weather. It could be, this race has always had 60 degrees, but the day you show up, it may be that rare 80-degree day. So you kind of have to have a plan of, if it gets really hot, what am I going to do? Or the opposite, if it gets really cold, what kind of layers can I add on that aren't going to complicate the costume?
Incredible advice here. I love also, and I feel like this is a great time to pivot into, you started off with, you should try out the costume, but I don't really ever do that myself, which leads us into our coaching sometimes, which is do as I say, not as I do. So as an UESCA, and I think I pronounced that right, UESCA certified ultra running, yep, which is the United Endurance Sports Coaching Academy. So you're an ultra running coach. Tell us a little bit about how do you blend your love of running, because it feels like you bring so much joy to this aspect of movement and this aspect of your life. Well, you bring joy to everything, I'm sure. But how do you balance that for yourself and your athletes with also serious, smart training?
Well, the coaching, getting my coaching certificate was mostly driven by me wanting to expand my own personal knowledge. Mm-hmm. I wanted to learn more about, the physicality of running and, just kind of what can I learn to make my running better. I'm kind of known as the enabler. I'm the one who always like, oh, here's a great race. Why don't you join me at this? So, when I tend to convince people to run their first ultra, I'm tending to get a lot of questions, well, how do you fuel for this? Or how do you, prepare for different terrains? And what about, the different things that you're going to engage in or be exposed to with an ultra? So, I found that I was giving out a lot of advice and sharing my experiences with people. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, well, that's, kind of the natural progression is I want to have the confidence in what I'm talking to them about and have it, be backed by, it's not the title really of, ultra running coach. It's just the, the knowledge of at least I have some experience in reading and other, just pulling the experience from the UESCA program into what I'm sharing with anybody that I work with.
So I love to hear that. And I'm curious, does your training plan include the official Fireball celebratory dance? Like, do we get that in part of our training plan? It's like we run a training run.
It's, okay. It's always optional. It's always optional. I do toss in, the things that I do. Here's what works for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but you may want to try this.
So let's talk about some of the advice that you have given for folks that are tapping into that ultra running aspect of where they want to go. Maybe what's the one mistake that you see runners make when they go from marathon to the ultra distance?
It's kind of one of the same things that happens in regular road races, is going out too fast. I mean, when you're running a 24-hour race, you can't go out at breakneck speed. You've got to learn to pace yourself. And you need to not be as concerned about your pace, your running pace, unless you have a specific time goal. If you've got a time goal and you want to finish this 100-miler in 24 hours, then you need to know that overall pace, and you need to know what the time cutoff may be for a race. If it does have a 30-hour time limit, you need to know kind of what your overall pace needs to be. But people just go into like breaking down every single mile of, I need to be running this speed. Mm-hmm. It's just that ultra running seems to be a little bit more relaxed for the average runner. Not that podium people, but just average runner is a little bit more relaxed and laid back. So, going into it with the mindset of, this is going to be fun. It may be painful at points, but it's going to be fun, and going in with a relaxed attitude, not just taking off and, like banking time or whatever. So it's totally a different mental game than just regular road running.
I love that advice. I think that that's something that actually, while it is a different mental game than traditional distances or road running races, I would still say that it does apply to so much in life, where don't always be in such a rush. Even like going back to your personal experience of you decided to tackle the 50 states in a more leisurely pace, because I know I have a friend who tackled it like, I think, a year and a half. And I thought the exact same thing. I was like, I don't know that I would want to go to these states and just tap in basically for a race and have to leave. So I love that you appreciate like kind of really enjoying the journey of it, whether it's tackling goals or tackling the ultra distance. And it sounds like too, just having a bit of a plan, but being flexible with the plan is kind of what I'm hearing you say as well.
Exactly. And that's kind of even going back to the 50 states. Nowadays, there's a marathon in every state on every corner, every weekend. Right. When I started that journey, there were only so many marathons in South Carolina. There were only so many. I think there was literally only one in Rhode Island because, they were trying to find one so people could do the 50 states. So back then, if things happened, which they do on occasion, storms, snow in South Carolina, which put everybody, on alert. You have to be able to pivot at that point. So nowadays, it's a lot easier to do the 50 states quicker because, there are companies that put together these strings of, 5 states, 5 days, 6 states, 6 days. So it's a lot easier to find them than it was back when I was doing it.
Yeah, same with 7 continents. It used to be, again, it was like an impossibility and $100,000 to tackle Antarctica. Now you can pretty much find a tour company that'll plan all 7 of them, put on a race for you, kind of a thing. So I definitely think that there's been an evolution of making some of these goals a little bit easier. Also, some of the goals are getting harder, as you mentioned, with the World Marathon Majors getting more and more difficult to get into. Before we tap into all of the silliness and fun, because I definitely want to make sure we talk about some of the amazing aspects of Disney Day Drinkers running team. And then I want to have a couple more questions with you, but what's the biggest changes you've seen in running in your time or the running community?
Over time, again, people seem to be like, when I started running in the early 2000s, I was really only exposed to the road running aspect of it. So it took me, 15, 18 years before, actually not quite that long, before I got exposed to the ultra world. So just looking at, road running back when I started, I think now it's a lot more, I think it's not as hard of a goal as people think, or meaning a lot more people are willing to like, yes, I want to run a marathon. Maybe a one and done. I may only do one. So I think it seems to be more of an accepting sport, and people of all paces, all shapes, all sizes, and all ages. I think a lot of people are, now thinking, marathoning is not, that fast-paced running that, you see and think of when you think of Boston and the Olympics. It is more of a welcoming sport, and a lot of races are making accommodations, for people with extended time limits. They understand that some people just can't run a 5-hour or 6-hour marathon. So some marathons are offering, more accommodating time limits, which is great, because even if you are trained and if you are a fast runner, you can have a bad day and things can go wrong and you may need more time that day. So I think that it's great to see races that are very welcoming to all forms of runners, people that walk, people that just walk races. So I think that's one of the great things that I've seen in races since I've started running.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I love that welcoming, inclusive energy, which of course naturally segues perfectly into the Disney Day Drinkers running team. Tell me what you feel makes this running team so special and how you got involved with them.
Well, what's not fun about Disney? And what's not fun about enjoying some cocktails? So, it's been one of these projects that I'm so happy I got involved in. And it's going on, I can't remember how many years now. But so if you are familiar with the flagship Disney Day Drinkers Club, it is a Facebook group. And it's kind of built to promote people going to Disney World. And, it's not about just drinking around the world and getting sloshed. We are not the people showing up on the videos that you see of trying to climb, the tower in Mexico and, getting off in Small World, trying to take a bath or something like that. The concept is Disney World is an amazing place, all the parks, all the properties, and there are some amazing cocktails, bartenders, restaurants, food experiences there. So it's all about going and enjoying that responsibly. Kind of the concept is let's get to know the bartender. So, and it's a social network of, my favorite drink is a dark and stormy. Who's got the best dark and stormy, at Disney properties or at Disney at the parks. So kind of what naturally led into that, it was my friend Skip Shearer who started the Disney Day Drinkers Club, and I've known him for years. And part of the Disney world are the races that run Disney marathons, half marathons, and all the races at all the parks. Well, of course, when I kind of saw that little subculture of the Disney Day Drinkers starting, Skip reached out and asked if I would help support the team. I'm like, of course, anything to get me to talk about running and drinking and running and drinking. So it's been a great we really expanded, as Christine knows. She is also one of the admins there, and we do some fun stuff with the group. And, it's more about Disney and drinking. It's about running and just, sharing that passion for both of those topics with a group of people.
I think what I love about it is that it's a group of folks who really get you like 100%, because these are people who know what it's like to be in the queue or decide to skip the madness of the queue for the Run Disney registration with charity. We are familiar with definitely aspects of the charities. And of course, with what we do at the Disney Day Drinkers is we're very closely aligned to Kelsey's Hope and love them over there and all of the incredible aspects of what they do. So it really is kind of combining our love of community, of running, of Disney, because there is something a little special about that 2 a.m. wake up call to go run the parks, or even just being in the Epcot parking lot. So I do think it is an incredible place. I do think it is incredibly welcoming. I think another thing that what I've seen change so much in it, and even in the main club, is that you don't have to consider yourself a drinker to really be in part of it and enjoyable with the different outings that we have, because the outings are so varied between the main club and the running team as well. But it does lead me to, so knowing that Run Disney was your very first marathon, if you could sit down with the great folks at Run Disney and be like, you know what, it's time. Charlotte should plan this, knowing that we are amidst somebody who is such a great planner. What would your dream theme for a race weekend be?
Oh, that's tough, because here's the thing. I am OG Disney. I mean, I grew up, I have to admit, in the late 60s. I was born in the late 60s, so I'm a 70s child. And I am all about, I just know the OG, the Pooh and Eeyore and Tigger, and Donald and Daisy. So it's funny because I really get intimidated when I go to races, because, I'll see these costumes, amazing costumes, and I'm like, I have no idea who that is. I mean, I have no clue. I haven't seen a lot of the, more recent movies as many times as I've seen the older ones. So, I'm an OG fan. And so I love just going back old school. And I think they do that enough, when, especially when princesses, there's the OG princesses, Snow White and Cinderella. And there's the newer ones. So, but I'm just an OG fan. I just love, old school, kind of feel to Disney.
I love that about Marathon Weekend. I feel like it is a really good, great, like homage to the classic characters, specifically with Marathon Weekend, since we do have more of the classics that weekend. But you basically just described my running experience with any of my gal pals will be running and they'll want to stop at a character. And I'm like, I have no idea who that character is. And then of course there's a lot of shocked gasps and maybe some feelings of disgust, but thankfully they're willing to accept me for all of my flaws. That's okay, though. That's what's so great about, again, the D3 running team is that we are welcoming and inclusive. And hey, if you know those characters and we don't, we would love a little mini education on some of them. Exactly. Okay, my friend, a little rapid fire round, just a short one to wrap things up. What's harder, mile 90 of the 100 miler or waiting in line for margaritas at Epcot?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, mile 90 is... it's what we call in that world, like 85 to 90 is what's called the pain cave. I mean, you feel like you're so close. You're only, 10, 15 miles away. So it's kind of the same thing standing in line. It's like, oh, you feel like you're so close to that counter to order the drink. So, I think that my philosophy would be, at mile 85 or 90, grab a beer and, take a walk break. And then same thing, there's nothing wrong with grabbing a beer and having it, drinking and standing in line for your margarita.
You took my advice. I was like, I have no advice for anyone for the 100 miler, but for the waiting in line and margaritas, you come prepared with a drink for that line. Yes. Oh my gosh. You're again, brilliant. This is the kind of really practical life advice that you get when Charlotte's in your circle. And truly all you have to do is jump on into the Disney Day Drinkers Facebook group because she'll share all this with you. Do you have a running mantra?
I do. And it's the same thing as, try out everything before you run in it. I break this often, but it's no excuses. There's so many times, well, I don't want to run because it's raining, or, I want to stop now because my hip hurts. Or, I'm just going to sleep in today because I need the rest. There are valid excuses out there. There are things that, sometimes you need that mental break and you need that sleep in day and you need to experience running in the rain, but, sometimes it could be dangerous. So, it's kind of loosely modified or, loosely modified, but depending on the situation, right. But it's no excuses. There's so many reasons that you could stop a run, that you could not show up to a race, that you could, quit early, but you just got to get past that. So, you've got to get past these excuses of why it's not going to happen. So yeah, no excuses.
I think this is where it starts to really get into maturing as a runner and as a person and learning what to extricate, what's just BS and what's a valid for safety or a necessity for mental health, physical health, whatever the case may be. So yeah, I do love that. I love that it's pretty, again, short, sweet, and to the point, just like Charlotte. I feel like everything in your life is a little bit like that. If you had to say that you would be sponsored tomorrow by like a food company, a sports company, who would that sponsor be and why?
Well, I would love to get a shoe sponsored because, that's a lot of money that for running shoes. And I do go through quite a few pairs every year. But I jokingly have on my Instagram a video or reel that's called Why I Never Get a Shoe Contract. And it's because I always tend to have my shoes covered up with, dinosaur feet or, Mickey's feet or, some kind of unusual shoe covering. So I know I'm never going to get a shoe contract. Fireball would be ideal. I mean,
why haven't they come calling yet?
Yeah, I would love it.
Okay, so we now know Fireball needs to come calling. I have to say, where are folks following you? Are we following you on Instagram? Are we joining in the D3 running team and connecting with you there? Where do folks find you?
Definitely, I would love to invite everybody to join us on Facebook and on Instagram at the D3 running team. So on Facebook, it comes up as Disney Day Drinkers Running Team. And if you want to follow me personally, my Facebook is Charlotte Corriher, and I'm sure Christine will get my name out there. But the more fun stuff is happening on my Instagram, Marathon Costume Chick, CHIC. So, that's where I post my costumes after every race. I do these kind of little fun reels about sneak peeks into a costume if I've got a race coming up, I'll do a little reel that's called What's It Gonna Be? Where I'll, kind of give you a little insight into the making of the costume and tell you what the race is. So you see if you can figure out the connection to the race. All my costumes are themed towards the race, whether it be the name of the race, the mascot of the race, the city, the state. Sometimes it's seasonal, like around the holidays. It's, good to toss out some good Christmas outfits. So just love, kind of giving people, because people always ask, what are you going to wear? Or is it a secret? So that's why I started the What's It Gonna Be reels.
Those are a lot of fun. They definitely add a lot of just a good little connection with the guessing. Friends, I'll have that in episode notes, of course, so that you guys, if you are running or if you're out there and you can't stop, you definitely want to give Charlotte a follow. There's so much joy and levity as you can tell, everything she brings to the table. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. I feel like I just tip of the iceberg with how much knowledge you have and how much great stories you have. But thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks so much. As you know, I love talking about running. I love talking about races. I love talking about Disney races. So yeah, maybe towards the fall when the Disney races start cranking up, we can do a whole episode just talking about costumes and planning costumes for the Disney season.
Yes, you have an open invite. You just tell me when you want me to be ready with the microphone, and I am with it, because again, you have so much information to share with folks. So friends, if you want to learn more about Charlotte's coaching, her costuming tips, or how she keeps that crown so straight while logging triple-digit miles, still absolutely incredible. Check out those show notes for the links. And of course, join us over in the Disney Day Drinkers running team, where the hydration is always present. It's just maybe sometimes a little questionable as to what's going to be in there. The vibes are always immaculate, though. So until next time, keep striding toward the extraordinary, and never forget, a little glitter goes a long way.